All right.
We're live now.
Awesome, thank you. Welcome everyone, past chair members and new members to the board. We're really looking forward to this next round. We're gonna have a recap today of what we've done in the last couple of years and really looking forward to what we're gonna do forward. We'll start with a roll call. Probably best if we just go around, everybody introduce themselves because there's new table members. I'll start.
Go ahead.
My name is Beverly Barber. I am with the Water Tower Inn as the AGM there. I have been the past chair of the tourism board for the last year and a bit, and will continue on as the interim until we select a new chair.
I'm Kevin Wiley, General Manager of the Hotel. Nicholas Bratch, General Manager of Albany Express.
I'm Don Marini. I'm the General Manager of Micro Cal, and still a super. It won't let me go.
Hi, and nice to meet everyone. I'm Jeff Walker. I work for a consultant on between jobs. I work for Tourism Economics, which is a consulting firm in the tourism hospitality sector. I'm moving to Rove, data analytics firm in the hospitality sector.
Tracy White, and then General Manager of the company. Alana Kanovic, I'm a member of city staff here at City of St. Marie. I work as the manager of tourism.
I'm Madison Tupa. I'm the deputy city clerk. I'm not part of the board, but I am a city staffer here to present on meeting procedures. And thanks for having me. Rachel will be joining us shortly, and we'll do our road show. We're going to all the different boards and committees of the city and presenting information for everybody. So if you have any questions, feel free to let us know during the presentation. We're happy. Thank you.
Richard, do you want to go next?
Okay. Richard Walker, I was formerly a partner at KPMG, retired now for almost 10 years. And I am the chair at the Bush Plane. So you'll hear lots about the Bush Plane during the next couple of years.
Perfect. Thanks, Richard. And I'm Travis Anderson, Director of Tourism and Community Development for the City of St. Marie. Nice to meet everybody.
Nice to meet everyone. I'm Laveen. I work at OLG, but I have my own digital platform on YouTube, Instagram to promote the city. I moved here back in 2020 without knowing how to pronounce the name of the city. I saw the tourism website, so I was inspired by that.
Thank you, everyone. And we do have Josh coordinating today for us the live stream and the meeting minutes. Chair is not with us this week. She normally handles that.
Just one other one that I forgot. So Lawrence Foster, who is an event organizer, has actually got a TDF on the agenda today, and also an instructor in the ecotourism outdoor adventure department at Sioux College. Is normally here, but not able to make it today.
Excellent, thank you. So at this point, we will turn it over to Madison to present on behalf of the city with regards to how the board works and what the expectations are.
Great. Like I said, I'm Madison Tupa. I work in the clerk's office, and we're going to talk about meeting procedures of committees and boards of council. I can go to the next slide. So boards and committees, local boards and committees of council include advisory and other committees of boards whose members are appointed by council for an ongoing purpose. So a lot of the members here were all appointed by council back on January 9th, I believe, and for an ongoing purpose, obviously. And I think there's also special committees appointed by council or the head of council anytime that's deemed necessary. So we do have ad hoc committees, we do have task force. There are a number of different types of groups that meet on a variety of different reasons, but this one in particular is a committee of council with members appointed. Yeah, there you go. You want to jump right in? Governance and management.
So, wouldn't mind introducing yourself before.
I got stuck. I am city clerk, and Madison and I are doing this road show. I don't even know how many times now. We can only push auto play, but I think a lot of you have heard it before. But always good to have the overview with a new committee starting up, so that we're not getting calls from the ombudsman mostly, right?
Yes, we did have that last year, and I can explain that further. But
we'll talk about that, and it's a great, we're looking at it as a teachable moment, right?
Exactly.
Because I do find, a lot of our boards and committees are like, well, it's making this, doing all these stupid rules, and it's not us. So this is a good evidence that
Yes.
it's not us.
I have a lot of teachable moments in my life.
So when we talk about governance versus management, so a governance board provides oversight and planning, sort of big picture stuff, whereas operations are the responsibility of staff. And staff bring operational plans, strategies, and budget, and of course, those will align with the corporate strategic plan that's approved by council for review by the board, and the board makes recommendations for council's consideration.
So accountability, we didn't bring our big book, but we do have a big book of legislation. Accountability and transparency, there's requirements under the Municipal Act, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, which we'll get into in a little while. The city's procedure bylaw, which we can circulate a copy of, Travis and Luana have copies of that, but we can certainly circulate that if you wish to take a look. And those are the things that we utilize to govern the meetings and rules of procedure. And our code of conduct. So the code of conduct is going under a review right now. We can certainly send a copy as it is right now, but we are looking at it to make some updates. So it will, once we have those finalized, we'll bring it to council for approval and then recirculate it to all the groups with the updates. So all of our local boards and committees are subject to the city's procedure bylaw. There are some differences in terms of which Rachel will get into it in a minute, but we are subject to those documents.
So the procedure bylaw, as Madison says, it applies to the proceedings of council, but also to all the boards and committees of council. And when we talk about committee means any advisory or other committee, subcommittee, or similar entity of which at least 50% of the members are also members of the council or board. So I don't know whether this board uses task forces.
We haven't.
If you had more staff than board members, you're not subject to the closed meeting provisions or to the procedure bylaw. So you can be, usually that's for working groups, but you need to have more staff than members. So once you have more members, you're subject to procedure bylaw and open meeting provisions of the Municipal Act. And local board does not include, specifically in the legislation, does not include police services or public library. I had a crown put on this morning and the freezing's not gone yet. So I'm
And the subcommittees as well. So if you do form a subcommittee, those subcommittees are subject to the same rules as well. So the definition of a meeting means any regular, special, or other meeting of a council or local board or committee or of either of them, where a quorum of members is present, and where members discuss or otherwise deal with any matter in a way that materially advances the business or decision-making of the council, local board, or committee. And we say this too, because you might be in a situation where you do have quorum in a room and it's not, you're going to an event or something where everybody's present. And that's okay, as long as you're not materially advancing the business of this group. So we had all the councilors at a budget input session, which was for the minute to get input for budget, but we can't talk about business at that function. So, or if you're out for lunch or something, that kind of thing. So just be mindful of that. And also group email discussions can constitute a meeting. So if you have a group email going with all the members or quorum of members of the group, that constitutes a meeting. So you're improperly closed. And it should not occur because it can't meet the criteria for which you can't have the public do that in action, right? So.
Okay, yeah. So the agenda is set by the chair in consultation with your staff resource person. We ask that it's posted to the website at least 24 hours in advance. A week is ideal. And that includes any attachments, reports, that sort of thing as well. And that's to maintain that transparency, that folks know what's on your agenda, what you're going to be discussing. They can view the same material as you can. The business is considered in the order set forth on the agenda, although the chair can vary that for reasons of convenience. And any member can ask that a motion is placed on the agenda, provided that they have a seconder.
So open meetings, the meeting shall be open to the public and no person shall be excluded therefrom except for improper conduct. Often the chair will facilitate those types of situations. Notice of meetings is published on the city website, so including the agendas and minutes. And again, that's for both open and closed meetings, so you still need to provide proper notice for both types of meetings. And subcommittee meetings, things like that. If you have quorum, you need to provide notice of the subcommittee meetings as well. The public may record by video or audio, so you may have someone come into the room and just place a recorder right there, and that's fine. They'll record it, and maybe members of the media or something like that may want to do that as well for potential articles down the road. And subcommittees again are subject to the same procedural bylaw and open meeting provisions. I mean, the other thing I was going to say is it's a bit more relaxed. We're in council, it's through you, Mr. Mayor, to, when you're in these committees, it's a little bit more informal. Yeah, you're in committee, so it's not as formal that way, but it's still subject to proper conduct and all of it.
And we put that last bullet in because we did discover boards that were like, okay, we're going to be open, but if we have a little committee that's dealing with this project, we're not open. Again, if you've got 50% or more, you're open.
The hard to read slide.
Yeah, I'll do this cluster together. It's a terrible slide. It's hard to read, but what we've done is pasted in verbatim the provisions of the act that allow a meeting to be closed. And we're always available if you're kind of not so sure whether this needs to talk about where a closed item might fall. We always tell people you're not enclosed because it's uncomfortable. Because sometimes it does feel uncomfortable, but you have to fall into one of these sections of the act. So security of the property of the board, personal matters about an identifiable individual, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land. I wish they changed it to property because if we've got assets that aren't real property, then we can't do it. Labor relations or employee negotiations, litigation or potential litigation, advice that's subject to solicitor client privilege. If you ever have that, you want to make sure that that's double vetted to make sure it meets the criteria for a solicitor client. A matter in which the board could have a closed meeting under any other act. I don't know in your board how much these next three, sometimes there's information that's explicitly provided in confidence by the feds or the province. Sometimes and I would expect you may see this from time to time, it's a trade secret or something like that that's going to, if it were made public, would undermine the position of the body giving it to you. So I can see that I, being one that you may need to use, the one that we use. Yeah. And J is also trade secret, but it's the trade secret that's belonging to the municipality or the board. K, when it first came out as an addition, made us really nervous because when it talks about a position plan or procedure, that's like a soup. You could put any number of things in there, but you want to make sure that it's going to meet the test. That just because you may think that fits there, you don't want an ombudsman investigation that says otherwise.
And H we would use, so oftentimes we get announcements on funding that aren't made public yet.
Yeah.
That's probably the only time we would use that.
Yeah, but I think those are probably more than disposition of property and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff that you would be in on those guys. And we also like to point out that that section of the act is permissive, not prescriptive. So it doesn't mean you have to go into close for it. As a rule, you're going to want to protect your position.
And I think too, we might get touch on it later, but if you're in close for a certain item, you don't want to veer off track and go into talking about something else. So chair and staff can assist with that as well, just to make sure you're on track and you're not discussing things you shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's easy to do, but you need to, even at city council, especially with the new ones, right? We had to be like, they get so passionate. It's not that they're trying to use that as a way to break the rules. It's just that we pull them back. So can you go to the next slide? there's a couple of exceptions. The meeting can be closed for educating or training the members. So if we were just doing this, you could have it in closed for it. Provided, again, you don't talk about anything that's going to advance the business. Our advice generally, even with city council, is to have it in open, because whenever you're in closed, people are like. And generally speaking, for these kind of sessions, our strategic planning sessions, if the media does come, it's not really exciting stuff. So our advice or best practice is, as much as you can go into closed for education and training, why not? Why not leave it open?
So for closed meeting,
Yeah, I was gonna do closed meeting investigations and then throw you into,
is that what's next?
Yeah.
No.
um,
The figures are
oh,
in the wrong order.
okay,
But do you want to add that in now? Is that a new
I
slide?
think, we've had so many permutations of
I just
this,
want to
I
mention
don't-
one thing about this before you do a closed meeting investigations, only for the fact that when you have a closed meeting, if you're only having a closed meeting, you still have to pass the motion and open. So what we'll do for council is we'll live stream the reading of the motion, the vote. Once everything's confirmed, and it's carried, we'll close the live stream and then go into closed session. So there have been ombudsman's investigations of other communities that was a problem where they didn't do the motion open, and that's what you have to do.
What we did learn from my ombudsman is actually next. Because the tourism board, there were a few of them that had the Zoom link on the agenda. And then people would, if they wanted to watch it, would call and say, can you give me the coordinates so that I can watch the meeting? And that was the subject of there were two committees that were subject of the ombudsman investigation that just came out. That was like, that's not good enough. It can't be, it should be open. So now we're saying, and we had since November 2021 when that happened, put the link to the YouTube channel on there so that anybody can go to our YouTube channel, watch it. It's embedded in your agenda. Off you go. And as well, what we found, and I think it was Hamilton early on in pandemic got in trouble. They lost their live stream. They kept recording, I believe, but it wasn't live until they got their technology up to speed, whatever. And they were held to be improperly enclosed because there were parts of that meeting going on that weren't being live streamed. So just, we had that at City Council, actually, the last meeting where we lost our PA system and we were live on Shaw, but our YouTube had no audio. So we had to wait until we had everything restarted. Yeah. So that we were not having what could be called a closed session.
And the good thing about YouTube as well is it gives you a bit more flexibility with managing the meetings. So you don't have a waiting room with people you might not know who are in the waiting room and having to try to vet who's in the waiting room and making sure they're proper delegates or things like that. So the YouTube channel has worked out really well for observation of the meeting. And we've actually had a lot more people just watch the meeting and
More engagement, yeah.
engagement. So we're looking at it as a best practice going forward and not going back on those live streams. So it has had a number of benefits to city council meetings and other boards and committees.
And we've advised not to use Zoom as you're just wide open because people have had really salacious and inappropriate things just pop up into their meetings that, I know, sometimes things get tedious, but.
No, I've had that.
We did. Did you? Oh,
Full nudity, full,
yes. Yeah. Our Laird Township had it before Christmas and it's the bots, right?
Yeah.
And I think too, with what happened for our live stream situation, we did course correct right after. It wasn't that so when we became advised of that situation, all of our boards and committees had we had that mass email out. It's more education for all of us.
There was so much to learn.
Yeah, it was a bumpy time where we were meeting in person and it was all new to us. So, there's a few bumps in the road, but I think we're in a really good.
There are some good things about it.
Continuous learning still in the future too.
So your participants, of course, can participate electronically as well, which is also great if you're not feeling well or you're out of town. So our closed meeting investigations, the municipal act provides that a person can request an investigation by the ombudsman as to whether the council or board met improperly and closed, and they don't disclose to us who made the complaint. And the ombudsman then investigates, provides and publishes a report and recommendations if the board is found to have met improperly in closed session. And they just issued their report from November 21 for cultural vitality and tourism board. And there's a resolution on January 30 agenda saying how we intend to address their recommendations, which is what we implemented in November, like the 22nd, 2020, right? To embed the YouTube link in the agenda. It's no fun having an ombudsman investigation because it's just not. They're great. They're not adversarial, but it's not. What else did you not do right?
You can go to the next slide. So rules of conduct and debate, the chair presides. The board and committee meetings are held in the committee of whole. So talk a little bit about that. It's a bit more informal where you don't have to go through the chair to make those discussions or have those discussions. Committee of the whole allows rules to be relaxed with the number of times a member is allowed to speak and the length of speech. Obviously, you can work that amongst yourselves, and if you need to get people back on track or kind of say get back on point or move along to the next person, you know, the chair will facilitate that. A member shall not disobey the provisions of the bylaw or decision of the chair on questions of order of practice or upon the interpretation of the rules of procedure. So again, we can provide the procedure bylaw for people to take a look at, or breach parliamentary decorum. And again, that's, you know, behavior that's inappropriate or not acceptable, or name calling and things like that. So.
Hey. Motions shall be in writing. So it's a motion before it's passed. Once it's passed, it's a resolution. And I don't know how yours are worded off, and you'll have a preamble that's like, whereas this is a wonderful community, and whereas we want to, and whereas, but when you get to the operational piece of it, it's resolved that whatever the action is, moved and seconded. If a member wishes to introduce a motion that hasn't been on the agenda and it's of a substantive nature, so your agenda is, in the meantime, somebody's like, oh, I want to bring forward a motion that you would do it by notice of motion and then have a seconder and have that appear on the following agenda. It's mostly so that people, it's totally, so that you can't just torpedo something into a meeting of which there's not been sufficient notice either to the board itself or to the public.
Just for.
Oh, okay. If you do, I don't know how often you go into closed, but there's no voting in closed. It's more direction to staff.
The finality of a vote, subject to a motion to reconsider, we'll talk about in a sec. A motion once decided may not be reintroduced for 12 months, and that's to kind of stop every meeting someone bringing back up the same issue because it was turned down or defeated. So it can be reintroduced after 12 months, or a motion to reconsider must be moved by a member who voted with the prevailing side and seconded by either a member who voted with the prevailing side or a member who was absent. So a member who is absent can't move it, it can only second it, but it has to be moved by someone on the prevailing side that was at the meeting.
So if the motion was defeated, somebody who voted against it, if it passed, somebody who voted for it.
Yeah. And you would have to have a mover seconder to vote on that to be reconsidered. The next slide,
I
please.
think you already.
Yeah, and relevance of debate on all motions, discussion must be relevant to the subject under consideration, both in open and closed, and the chair would facilitate.
So when we talk about quorum, the mayor is an ex officio member, but is not counted in the quorum. You shouldn't conduct a business unless a quorum is present, and quorum is a majority of the members. And if somebody has to leave in the middle and you lose quorum, then the meeting ends. However, we're going to talk in a couple of slides about conflicts of interest. So if you lose quorum on account of declarations of conflict of interest, as long as you have 2 members, you're not deemed to have lost quorum that you can continue.
So administration, I was a staff liaison for many years on boards and committees, so I'm quite familiar with this. But the secretary shall keep minutes and record without note or comment. And I can attest to this. When I first started with the city and first started with committee meetings, I wrote everything down, included everything, all the commentary, all the discussion, who said what, and the action items. So that's not how it's done. We just record the decisions that were made and the motions and the result of those votes. And we're originally they were a corporation where the minutes of the meeting should reflect the decisions and not the narrative.
Which is just the resolutions. We don't think or feel, or we just have our corporate motion.
Yes.
No warm and fuzzies.
That's right.
So the staff liaisons typically will provide the notice of the meetings to obviously our communications office, and they'll post them on the website, and we post the minutes and agenda to the website so to get that over to our corporate communications division. And perform clerical functions as required. So you know, there's a few other items that staff will do. The chair of the committee votes. I think there's a common misperception out there that the chair doesn't vote, and or maybe only votes in the event of a tie. But the chair of the committee does vote. And there's a recorded vote. Everyone votes. There's no abstentions. And when a recorded vote happens, you'll say the name of the person, how they voted, and go around the entire table. We talked about this at our last presentation too, that if you do have multiple recorded votes, you may want to change the order in which people respond, just so that the same person doesn't vote last, or the same person doesn't vote first all the time. And if it's tied, it's defeated. And if you're not in the room, you just be marked as absent, like you're not at the meeting. Just be absent.
So Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. So if a member has, I like to put in the word financial instead of pecuniary, because I think this is it's only in municipal forum that we talk about a pecuniary interest. So if you have a financial interest, whether it's direct or indirect, and you're present at the meeting where the matter is the subject of consideration, you need to disclose that interest before it's discussed, not take part in the discussion or vote on the question. And recently, there were amendments in the last few years that there's a written disclosure. So that would be kept on file, that we actually pointed at the agenda item and the nature of your conflict. And critical that you not attempt in any way before, during, or after the meeting to influence the voting. And that interest also extends to the interest of family members. And we can go to the next one.
I think in open, you don't have to leave the room, but many do.
We're doing it so much we
open.
can do it in our sleep.
For open, you don't have to leave, but many do, but so.
Lots of members, you'll see members of council, they like to leave just for optics if they've got a conflict. It's also an opportunity to go get a coffee. If it's closed, they have to leave. And I don't know how often you would have a conflict in closed. There's just a little variable. You don't have to declare the nature of the conflict in closed, right? Because that could then let the public know what it is you were talking about. So in closed, you just need to say I have a conflict. In the open, you say I have a conflict because my spouse owns blank.
Rachel, could you talk about, give examples of indirect?
Yeah. Actually, I think that may be. That is my next slide because it does get confusing.
Okay.
Kevin has one as well.
I'm just concerned because we're voting on funding that directly impacts 5 of our businesses. So isn't that always going to be a conflict?
I've got a slide on that too.
Okay. I didn't see that. Thank you. Yeah. I didn't see it.
Okay, so I think my next, so if you're absent from the meeting, declare it at the next one. The disclosure is recorded in the minutes, and as we said, you still have quorum if your numbers are going down because of the declaration of conflicts. So on the indirect, I think that's the next slide. Yeah. So an indirect pecuniary financial interest, it's essentially is if your interest is because you're a shareholder or a director of a corporation, some other kind of member of a body that has a financial interest, or a partner. So it's to say, it's not my personal, because I'm dealing with this in a business, from a business perspective. That doesn't mean you're out of having to declare that conflict. You still have that financial interest. It's indirect because it's of a corporate nature as opposed to your personal. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay. And then I did, because I find those 3 slides really heavy and full of legalese. We put together sort of a questions to ask yourself. So do I have a financial interest in the decision, whether that's positive or negative? Does it directly affect my finances or those of my parent, child, spouse, etc.? Is it indirect? So am I a shareholder, corporate officer, member of a body, partner, or employee? If it's yes, and it's not subject to the exemptions we talk about in the next slide, declare a conflict in writing and don't attempt to influence the voting. So the exceptions, if you have an interest, and I think that's what you're talking about, if it's a financial interest that's in common with the members generally, right, then that's an exemption. So often, I don't know if it would be like the hotel industry as at large would benefit from something that you're doing. You've got that interest in common with the others. And the other reason is if it's so remote or insignificant that it can't reasonably be regarded as likely to influence the member. So I'm going to give you a copy for it. That's
So code of conduct, and like I said, we will circulate a copy of the code of conduct so everyone can read it. The Municipal Act requires that a code of conduct must be established by municipal councils, advisory committees, and local boards. The code of conduct addresses gifts and benefits, confidentiality, which is especially important, and I think going into closed and some of the information that boards and committees receive, especially the nature of some of those things that you've discussed previously in the meeting. There's some confidentiality clauses that you'll want to read in there. Use of board property, influence on staff, and improper use of influence. The complaints alleging violation are investigated by the Integrity Commissioner. Our Integrity Commissioner is Ironside Consulting, and there is a process by which you would make that complaint through our Integrity Commissioner. The results of the inquiry are reported to both council and the local board. So there, and in the code of conduct document, there is some information on the Integrity Commissioner process complaints, so you'll be able to look at that as well. And our last slide, communications and surveys. So we put this in just so everyone kind of has a lay of the land on communications that come out from the tourism board. The boards and committees are subordinate and accountable to council. So statements that are critical of city council or its members are not appropriate. So you don't want to lead out into a communication out to the community that's critical of city council.
We don't like what city council did, and we want your opinion. And that's why the slide is in there.
But that doesn't mean you can't garner input from people. And negative input is not necessarily being critical of council. It's gathering that input. You know, I use the example of the budget. We put out input, we gather input for budget, we put out a survey, we put out a platform for people to get back to us. Not all the comments are positive. So we're not suggesting that you don't get input or don't get comments or feedback. You just don't start with that positioning. And surveys are welcoming, and we would welcome public comment. We would love to have as much public feedback as we can on the things that we're doing.
I mean, even if it were, the point of this is you've got your umbrella of city council, so it's not appropriate to be publicly criticizing. But also your surveys, if surveys are biased or slanted to get negative input, what uses it? You want it to be as neutral.
Sorry to interrupt. On the code of conduct, and this is one I can't remember if it's in tied to this, but we definitely have it in our bylaws. But just for the board members, if you are missing, if you miss 3 or more meetings and you don't provide a sound reason for them, then you are removed from the board, which we had to do the last time. So I just want to make sure.
Procedure bylaw.
Procedure bylaw.
And I think that is actually echoing the act, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And we have had it happen on a number of occasions where people just,
We did that last term here.
and there's been
And we,
others.
city council with, members of council who've been, quite critically ill. And council just passed once it got to the 3, they passed the resolution saying, good with us, because they weren't going to, kick somebody when they're down, if you will, right? But if you've got somebody who's just not showing up and not giving you a reason, you want to have that opportunity,
Yeah, goes to the.
right? That's a different situation.
We want to have members that are coming to meetings consistently and contributing to the purpose of the. So,
Mhm.
absolutely, we can help with that, if that comes to be. But I don't know, any other questions or?
You know where to find us.
And you can, so the other one, I'm gonna talk about this in our, the presentation that I'm gonna do next. So you can reach out to staff directly. The way that our management agreement works is that you reach out to me directly. I've designated that authority to Alana as well. So we can, if you do email Alana or myself, CC either one of us, but you can't communicate directly with any staff below us. But if you have any questions about this, let us know and we can reach out to clerks on your behalf if you need to.
We do something similar with our information flow process, so the right people are talking to the right people and you're not getting either conflicting information or, Travis isn't aware that there's been, some significant ask of
Mhm.
stuff.
Perfect.
Okay, let us know. I know you've got copies of procedure bylaw, code of conduct, so on. Both of those are, as Madison said, subject to midterm review, but anything you need, Madison?
Thank you very much.
Thanks for.
You guys were to end at 12:40 and they're at 12:40. Okay, thank you very much. All right, Josh, do you want to tee up the next presentation?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I ordered you.
I came right over from the.
Thanks.
Goodness.
One the wrong way on the one way.
When is that? Well, the last time we did this.
Okay,
That's.
I didn't read that part. I just
Yeah.
read.
Like, is it gonna go on the menu or are you just eating?
So and that's,
Or no, actually, it was the presentation. I didn't read it.
oh, yeah,
No, wait a minute.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
as long as I
Yeah,
understand.
just let me know though.
Okay. So I'm gonna go through just the summary. It's a complicated, well, it's not a complicated board meeting, but there are a few intricacies that the new board members need to understand before we go into this board meeting. Because we've got financial asks of the board as well as financial asks of the TDF. So I just want to make sure that everybody's clear. Both in terms of how the finances are structured and then also the relationship between the board and staff. So Josh, next slide. Next one. Okay, so Tourism Sault Ste. Marie, the corporation, it's not for profit corporation independent of as a corporation independent of the city. The structure of the board and the purpose of the board is to provide guidance and strategic development of tourism within the community, looking at growing tourism within the community at large. And it is the guidance includes the development of tourism products as well as marketing. So Tourism Sault Ste. Marie and the city have a management agreement, which I can provide to all the board members or just the new board members if you'd like it. It outlines the arrangement between the city and the Tourism Sault Ste. Marie. The salient point is Tourism Sault Ste. Marie has no staff. So the city provides staff on your behalf. So Alana, myself, Josh, Tara, and Richard, which we'll have at the next meeting, we can explain the roles, all provide staff services, as well as we've got our financial department and clerks assist at times. Legal is handled separately. The board has its own legal representation, but we provide services for the rest. So when you're directing, if you're asking staff to do particular work, that's why Alan and I are the key points of contact, and then we could work with our staff to direct them on how to administer that. So Tourism Sault Ste. Marie, which I'll get into in a moment here, has their own funds and has the ability to determine how those funds are expended. And they'll do that through vote resolution. Next slide. So we're going to talk about the municipal accommodation tax. I think everybody knows that's a 4% flow-through tax that's collected off of room night stays. The purpose of that tax through provincial legislation is exclusively for the marketing and promotion of tourism and the development of tourism products. We split these funds between the city and Tourism Sault Ste. Marie. Richard probably way more capable of explaining the provincial calculations. It's complicated, but it has to do with respect to the average of provincial tourism receipts over 10 years, and there's a calculation applied there. We had the joy of going back and forth through that numerous times with our finance group here before we all came to an agreement on exactly how that was done. And then the remaining funds are split 50-50 through two city pockets, one of which is the city share. So tourism within the city, our department, so Lan and I, receive funds, and we determine how those funds are going to be used exclusively for tourism product development. We'll consult and engage with the board on how we intend to do that. But at the end of the day, it's the city's decision on how to use those funds. The remaining funds go into a fund of the city, which is the Tourism Development Fund. Staff receives those applications, we review them, we'll bring them forward to the board for recommendation. The board will vote on those and determine whether or not they want to recommend those to council. They then go to council for final vote and approval. Council, historically, with everything that we've seen, will rely on the expertise of the tourism board. So we haven't, and I think this is across the board with all the funds that we have. Council has never, in my experience, overturned a decision or a recommendation from the board. We'll go to the next one.
Travis, can I ask a question on that? Does it have to be a unanimous council vote to push it through?
No, it just says majority. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about how the 2023 MAT is going to be distributed for the calculation. So we have the way that it works is when we collect the MAT, we're always about 2 months behind in reporting. So as of right now, we have the MAT collection within city finance up until November 30th. So as of right now, we have 1.5 million and 30,000 and change. We've got yet to be reported are the December MAT numbers, but we're projecting it to be roughly around 1.6 million, which is about 300,000 above the 2019 collections. Based on the provincial calculation, it's looking like Tourism Sault Ste. Marie is going to get roughly 763K. The TDF will get roughly 400K, and the city share will get around 400K. So in addition to that, Tourism Sault Ste. Marie, we didn't expend all the funds, or you guys didn't expend all the funds during COVID. So you're also carrying over about 1.2 million in reserve funds. So and you do have some commitments out there. They've committed for this year, and I believe there's an invoice pending for roughly 100,000 for the downtown plaza. And sitting in reserve is an additional $340,000 for the expansion of the local mountain bike trail network. And happy to discuss this with any of the new board members after this meeting. So Tourism Sault Ste. Marie will have roughly 1.5 million available in 2023, or they can continue, earmarking some of those funds for a later date. So next slide, please. So with the funds that I mentioned, roughly the 763,000. We had a meeting, I believe in November, to go through the proposed tourism budget. I can provide the details to the new board members, but just a summary here. Roughly broken out, we've got 38,000 for group sales, travel and training. The bulk of that is for us to attend group trade shows where we're selling products and itineraries for Sault Ste. Marie. We've got materials and supplies, roughly 22,000. Marketing promotion is by far the largest dollar value, and it's at 428,000. I'm going to have Richard Jones, our marketing lead, is going to walk through our marketing strategy for 2023 at the next meeting, provide a bit of an overview of what we've been doing to date and the successes that we've been having. But it's been quite a large trajectory. I think when we were looking at our website data, pre-2020, we had about 65,000 unique views, and if I recall correctly, we're upwards of over 400,000 this year, like this year being 2022. We've got 65,000 set aside for bid support, and that's when we get large bids becoming available and we have to make a financial contribution for them. So sore point for me, but I'm going to carry this into this board meeting, board team as well. Ontario Winter Games required a substantial financial commitment. We needed funds available. We fortunately didn't bid on that, but anyways, I'm not bitter. And then general development is basically a bulk fund that's available. We used some of those funds last year for the investment in the lock tour boat. This year, there's some funding set as an event intern where we'll get matching funds from NOHFC to hire somebody on the administrative side of events. We've got funds set aside for strategic plan, where we're also getting matching funds from Destination Northern Ontario, and a few other items that I can speak to in more detail with new board members. And then we have a number of memberships and subscriptions that were required. The Ontario, I'm not going to get the name right, but the Ontario Cruise Association, there's a sporting conference commission, all those. Next slide, please. So back in November of 2021, we sat down with the board and we flushed out some of the key priorities for the board for the last term. Those were identified as investments in outdoor experiences, festival events and tournaments, as well as groups, and downtown waterfront and activation. So this was the priorities of those boards. This is part of the reason why we're going to advance a strat plan. We want to determine whether or not these are still the priorities and whether or not they make sense coming out of coming out of COVID. Go through next slide, please. So based on those recommendations, staff looked at products that were known destination drivers and proven to attract overnight stays, products that are high quality visitor focused and market ready with a strong potential for growth, products that reinforced our competitive advantages in regional areas where we can be world class, products that align with Destination Ontario and Destination Northern Ontario priorities, which also assists us in accessing additional funding from them. Products that incorporated the learnings of COVID-19 and are anticipated to impact tourism on a go-forward basis, which align with the outdoor adventure. And products that can draw visitors in slower times in the tourism calendar, which historically has been November through April. Next slide. So just a quick little recap here, some of the accomplishments that the previous board had. The first one being the introduction of the Tourism Development Fund. And I think that is the most impactful change to this community in terms of growing the tourism industry. So there's been a multitude of events that have been able to access funding through that program, as well as products. So it allows the private sector and not-for-profit sectors to apply for additional funding, help offset the risk that they're taking when they're moving either new events forward or products forward. We've developed a new brand and we executed a successful marketing campaign, which Richard is going to speak to. We implemented new community wayfinding, which is the new signage that you see around the community. Speaking of the municipal funds that went into, let's talk quickly. Municipal funds went into that. It went into the new kayak docks as well as the cycling infrastructure and obviously into the downtown plaza as well. The board provided financial support for the Lock Tour Boat, Hogan's Homestead, which is building out a group tour program at their maple syrup making facility where they'll be interpreted, and Destination Northern Ontario is currently marketing that to group tours overseas. There was an investment and contribution to the downtown plaza. The board also supported a contract position for a film coordinator, which is responsible for drawing film to Sault Ste. Marie locally, which actually aligns now with TIAC's growth strategy for tourism in Canada. And Bonsu, which we are now trying to reinvest in the Winter Festival and really bring it back to its former glory and hopefully build upon that. As mentioned, we put the kayak docks in St. Mary's River to support some of our local bides. We invested in cycle tourism, primarily the expansion of the new mountain bike trails. We've supported the relaunch of the Agua Canyon tour train. We are actively working with Watco. We meet with them on quite a regular basis. We're assisting them with their marketing. We're assisting them with preliminary discussions on grant applications and a number of other matters. And currently working with Bonsu, as I mentioned, in a number of local events. I'll go forward. And so the 2023 work plan, this is, the preliminary list. I'm sure we'll add a lot more to this. We've got an RFP out right now for the development of a new strategic plan, as well as the inclusion of a business development and attraction plan. So we can look at hopefully adding some more products to our tourism ecosystem here. We're looking at, got some funds set aside to activate the waterfront and downtown with summertime events. We are going to continue our expansion of our local mountain bike trail network with the funds that were committed through the tourism board as well as the city, and potentially some new funding from Fedora if we're lucky, or sorry, from the federal government and hopefully the provincial government as well. We're going to continue support for private sector investments. We've got some items that are currently confidential that we can talk in closed at the next meeting that we'll be bringing forward. We're excited for the community, and we're going to continue to support some of the larger festivals and festivals that we see growth opportunities in, such as Bonsu, Summer Moon Festival, and a number of other local festivals and events. So that's a very quick overview. Just wanted to give the team here a bit of a sense of what we've been working on. And again, happy to discuss this further, at the next meeting or outside of the meeting if you like.
Thank you, Travis. Does anyone have questions for Travis? With regards to all of that knowledge?
There's a lot there.
There is.
I'm gonna go see if Memorial Cup guests are
Okay, declaration of pecuniary interest. We did have warrants put forth a written declaration with regards to the upcoming tourism development fund application that we have with Peter Freezer. He's not in attendance today, but fine.
And Travis, you didn't do as good a job as Rachel.
Ouch!
You're over time.
Oh man, brutal. But yeah, I'm way over 7 minutes. We'll make it up. I'm not going to take this nonsense from the guy hanging out in Florida. If you could only see out the window here, Richard, you'd understand my pain.
Has it started to snow?
Oh yeah, significantly. Hey Tim, how are you?
You can have seat right up here.
Good to see you. How are you? Yeah, you as well. I'll pop down here and you guys can take the here if you like, because you'll have the presentation on behind you.
Oh, okay.
Right here, so craziest. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Hi there.
Hi.
How are you? I don't know if you guys are more than happy to sit in or if you like. It's an open meeting.
We can move some of these cards back to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So room for everyone?
You guys, oh, you guys are there. Okay.
Welcome. Thank you.
All right, I'll introduce our guests at the back in a minute when we get to that item on the agenda, but right now we're going to speak a little bit about the Memorial Cup and the community's quest for a bid to host in 2024. So we have with us Tim Lupenda and Frank Sarlo, who are going to present today a little bit about the Greyhounds and what we want to try and do with our community to lock this bid in for the Memorial Cup. It's a really, really exciting opportunity and excited to have them present to us today.
I'm just gonna add one more thing. Sorry to interrupt. So Tim and Frank presented this opportunity to the previous board back in 2020. I think the previous board saw a great opportunity here and passed a resolution to support that. So staff obviously share a similar perspective. We're gonna let Tim and Frank give you a quick overview here.
Great. Thank you both. Afternoon, everyone. It's our pleasure to be here. We're here to talk to you about the 2024, what we're calling the Quest for the Memorial Cup. We're in the hunting mode right now, trying to land this really exciting event for Sault Ste. Marie. We think it would be a wonderful thing for our community, would do a lot for tourism and economic activity in the community, as well as the civic pride and all of the other aspects that come with hosting a major national event of this nature. The Memorial Cup. Managing the slides.
He can hear it. There you go. Just tell him when you want to move to the next slide and he'll move. Yep.
Oh, hello, Richard.
Richard, and then in the background is Josh from our staff. We can't see him. He's going to be running your slideshow for you.
Hi, Josh. Okay, so just for those who aren't familiar, I don't want to assume that you are. The Sault Greyhounds are part of the Ontario Hockey League, which is part of the Canadian Hockey League. The Canadian Hockey League is made up of the Ontario League, the Western League, and the Quebec League, the three regions of Canada. It's a coast-to-coast major junior hockey league. And these players are the best of the best, 16 to 20-year-olds, that many of whom go on to play at a higher level of hockey when they're done in our league. And you'd be familiar with a lot of the names that have come through the Greyhounds over the years. Wayne Gretzky, most notably, Ron Francis being a local boy who's now the general manager of Seattle Kraken in the NHL after a storied Hall of Fame hockey career. So we've had a lot of players that have come through, and it's a source of real pride, obviously, for our community. This is the culmination of a long season. It's the national championship that happens after the winner of each of those three leagues is declared. Those three teams, plus the host city, compete in the Memorial Cup every year. The Memorial Cup moves regionally throughout those three regions every year. So last year was held in St. John, New Brunswick. I had the pleasure of going out and seeing how they operated their Memorial Cup. This year it's in Kamloops, BC. And the following year, 2024, it will be in Ontario. There are 4 bidders for this Memorial Cup, besides Sault Ste. Marie, Kingston, Ontario. Niagara is the name of the team. It's actually St. Catharines, Ontario is where it's based. And Saginaw, Michigan, who is ironically a member of the Ontario Hockey League, but they are also bidding on the Memorial Cup in 2024. So there's 4 people for 4 communities that are competing for this. We feel we have a really good chance, but it's dependent on putting in a really strong bid that covers off a number of criteria. We last hosted the Memorial Cup in 1993, which is a long time ago, but there's still a lot of buzz in the community about that event, and actually throughout the hockey world, there's still a recognition of what a great job the community did at that point in time to rally around the event. It was done differently back then, and they actually had 6 weeks. Frank was very much involved in the event in 93. They had 6 weeks from when they found out they were going to be the host to when the event went on, and they pulled it off. And it was truly one for the ages. And it's something that we hope to be able to recreate the spirit and atmosphere of.
We only have 18 months this time.
That's right. So the Memorial Cup, what I want to really emphasize for you is that while it is a hockey championship that consists of 8 games throughout a 10-day period, It's much more than hockey. It's truly a community festival. And you'll see the events that we're planning and that we're submitting to showcase our community are much more than just hockey. It's really trying to create a whole festival atmosphere throughout the community over a 10-day period that welcomes people from out of town, hockey fans, non-hockey fans, everyone. There's something for everyone to do and participate in an event like this. There will be a Memorial Cup arrival ceremony and parade. There's a opening banquet, a golf tournament, a fun run throughout the downtown area, a fan fest, beer gardens and concert series that's going to be centered around the new plaza and the Roberta Bondar Center, and an awards banquet at the end of the week, amongst other activities. So what we're trying to do with our bid is promote a downtown entertainment district, if you will, with the arena, Roberta Bondar, the hotels in the area, and all of that, creating this walkable festival atmosphere over the 10-day period to draw people in and create the right atmosphere for the event. The Memorial Cup Selection Committee is looking at a number of criteria. And among the criteria is I'll say, reputation of the bidding franchise, number one. Second would be the expected competitiveness of each of the teams in the year that it's going to be hosted, because as you can appreciate, the host team is getting an automatic bid into the championship. So they want to make sure that the team is worthy of being in the finals, if you will. The third thing is the host community, facility, amenities, and the atmosphere that you can create. And the final thing is the business plan and the ability to be able to support the kind of events that are part of this, of the bid and the atmosphere that we want to create. In terms of economic impact, it is a big event. It was held in St. John's, as I said, last year. Was Halifax, I believe. 2 years before that, it was in Kelowna the year in between that. But unfortunately, the year that Travis was referring to that we presented to this board 3 years ago, the event was canceled because of COVID. So we had planned, we were down to one of 2 finalists in that case, and we felt really good about our chances, and the event was canceled. So this is now it's moved east and west, and it's back to Ontario, and this is our next kick at the can to try to host this event. The economic impact is quite significant. We have a report from the Halifax that shows over $13 million of economic activity that's driven by it, with restaurants, hotels, all the other things that go into the number of visitors. 55,000 spectators will come through that arena over the course of the 10 days and want to be involved in activities outside the arena morning, noon, and night. The bid itself, we are submitting our formal bid package by the end of this month. We have 10 days left. We're scrambling to put in the final touches on our bid. And what we are trying to do is piece together a business plan that shows the level of the amount of support from different areas that we are approaching. There's provincial, municipal, corporate, tickets, all of those things together will support the cost of the events that we're hosting as part of the event. The bids go in at the end of this month. There'll be no in-person presentation, unfortunately, but there will be a question and answer call as a follow-up on some of the specific criteria. And then the announcement of the winning city will occur sometime in March for the event that will be the following May. And so that's the timeline we're working on. We would really appreciate your support with this event. We think it would be great for the community as a whole. And we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. Frank, did you want to add anything to it before we entertain questions?
No, it's the fact that we do have the experience in putting on the festival. And in the last 10-day festival that I was involved in was homecoming. And it taught me what a great community we had. We had a goal at that time of having 10 events a day for 10 days. And we ended up with 1,002 events over. And it shows what kind of community that we lived in, because people come on board want to be a part of it. So I have absolutely no doubt that the festival atmosphere will be phenomenal.
We anticipate a large organizing committee and committees that touch on each of the areas to execute a big event like this. And we expect over 500 volunteers to be needed to do that. And we have no doubt, as Frank said, that the community will respond to that and be quite anxious to be involved.
I've already talked to a number of people and they're ready to go already. So it's, there's no doubt about that.
So just before we entertain questions, Alana, do you want to speak very briefly about the benefit of an event like this for our sports hosting resume?
Oh, absolutely. So in the world of bidding for events, oftentimes the criteria for the evaluators, they want to look and see what your community has hosted in the past. We call that our sport hosting resume. So we have a long list. We posted the Tournament of Hearts, we posted the Briar, we posted some large scale events, but if you look on that resume, they're at the end of the list where they're starting to get bumped off. They're dated. 1993 is a long time ago to have hosted the Memorial Cup. The Briar in 1990 is no longer relevant. So we have to start looking at what can we do as a community that showcases us as being capable of hosting these grand events. And we know that we are. Our time is due to start having some larger events on our resume. And then what that will in turn do is leverage future opportunities to go after. We have bragging rights, if you may, to say, we've hosted the Memorial Cup. We have now hosted the Briar. We have hosted the curling, the list goes on. So it transfers between sport. It doesn't really matter what those sports are. It shows our capability, it shows our credibility, and it shows our capacity. And volunteers, we talked, Tim and I briefly talked about this too, but Sault Ste. Marie has an amazing ability to pull together large number of volunteers for events. We're often overlooked thinking we have a smaller northern community. We can put together 600 volunteers and they're going to shine. Their experience, their skill, they have all of those checks. So when we host these types of events, it validates what we already know. So it's critical for us to be able to advance our attempt in securing future events to hold big ones like this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank and Tim, for joining us today. I will open it up to the board members with any questions for our guests.
I have a question informally. Do you feel that they maybe they owe us one for 2020?
In some ways I do. I don't know for sure that it's all the same people that are deciding on it, but I do think there's a little bit, there certainly was, I think we had, the emotional edge at that time, and I hope some of that carries over. Yes.
It was, the other city is not bidding, correct?
No, that was Oshawa at the time. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. And just the situation with their ownership, and also they didn't feel their team was in a position to succeed. They decided not to bid this time.
Yeah.
Tim, just a comment / question. There's going to be an ask at some point here. I think if we knew the hoteliers in the room night implications based on the map collected from that, how much of that is actually offsetting the ask in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't bring the actual room occupancy. Sorry. That's okay. I might be able to pull it up.
I have somewhere.
I know we have it.
You know where I'm going. There's
I did.
there from the man.
We'll be involving, Alana's looking for that, we'll be involving 7 hotels. There's a requirement that there be a host hotel. Each of the teams has to have a different hotel. The officials have to be in a different hotel. Parents, all, and then the visitors, right? So there's, we expect to utilize a lot of hotel room nights throughout this period, and we'll get you that exact number of the recent experience with the other events, but it is a very large hotel event.
Yeah, I have to pull up the exact number, but
Was there anything in the slide from Halifax there with their 13 million?
There was, they have that report with me.
I'll pull up the exact numbers. What I can share though is this will cross every hotel in our community.
Yeah.
Every hotel, motel will likely see, well, not likely, they will see positive revenue from this event. It's in a community of our size should fill us up. Yeah, and then what we calculate through on those map returns is quite high.
Yeah, even if you go back with the experience with under 17,
The world under 17.
like if even people that were in your hotel, if they were associated with under 17, they were associated with under 17, be it a scout, parent, a grandparent, an interested party.
I think it's important here too that you have a festival atmosphere. It's not only hockey, and as Tim said, it's a festival which will attract people from everywhere for the events that are going to be. And I think the events are extremely important besides these events that are showing for hockey.
So Alana and Travis will know I think what we need to do is get a mechanism in place so that we can track exactly what the numbers will mean to the hotelers, but also the attractions. And at times, I don't think we've got the appropriate systems in place in order to do that. But I think if we're going to go forward with a lot of these larger projects, that information would be extremely important to this board.
Yeah, absolutely. We can incorporate that. I mean, I think the calculation of the map based on hotel night stays is pretty straightforward. The trickier one, Richard, as you know, is the benefit to the attractions, but we'll have to try to figure that one out. I'm sure there's a model that we can use.
And Richard, the bid document did actually refer to that as well and request that whatever analytics like that could be provided and tracked, they would appreciate as well. So we're completely on side with that.
If I may share the STEAM report, which is the paid economic impact report. It's run through the Canadian Sport Tourism Alliance, so it's a validated EI report for sports tourism. In 2019, Halifax paid to have this report done, which means they actually had live people on site asking for visitor data at hotels, doing surveys, entry. So the information in here is sound. Bearing in mind their location is different, so the numbers will sway a bit, but they had 18,879 visitors registered in their community for the event. That's a pretty sizable number. It resulted in $11+ million of expenditures, created 90 jobs within the community, and overall economic impact surpassing 20,000. $3+ million in taxes supported for the community. The list goes on and it details it all out. But if you use even a number of 10,000 visitors over 10 days, you're at 100,000, potential visitor days.
Did we talk the dates? We talked 2024, but what are the actual dates?
May 24th to June 2nd of 2024. So last week of
No.
What's after?
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And speak my naivety. Is there an optic that should already exclude Saginaw from a very, very Canadian event? I mean, I don't know, has a US city hosted before?
It's a great question. The Canadian Hockey League has 2 American teams in the Ontario League, being Saginaw, or 3, Saginaw, Flint, and Erie. And then there are 5 in the Western Hockey League. The event was hosted at least once in the Western League by, I think it was Spokane, maybe twice in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle. It has never been hosted by an American team in the Ontario Hockey League. And one of the barriers historically has been that there are national sponsors of the Canadian Hockey League who don't transfer to the US. In other words, they don't have visibility in the US, so there's no value to them in having it in the US. The American teams have kind of said, hey, wait a minute, we're part of this league too, and so there's been some efforts to try to in Ontario to make it possible for it to be hosted in the US. I don't personally think it's ideal for a number of reasons, but I think there is an effort to make sure they feel like they have a chance and do have a chance to host it. Saginaw has some other, challenges. And I feel like we could put together a superior bid, but they are technically eligible being a full-fledged member of the.
100%, of course, I agree that everyone should have a chance for it. I was just wondering if you're a Vegas man, Tim, are the odds on Saginaw being the host below?
I would love for Saginaw to win the Ontario Hockey League and us to host it, because I think we draw a lot of people from Michigan. That would be the ideal.
Is, I guess, also factoring into these odds, the fact that Ontario's never had a US team host,
That's
does
right.
that make them a good chance?
It's hard to say.
Yeah, well, that's what we're.
Right, we're not in the room.
Hard to say whether there's,
I just, with
Whether there's
the finger on the pulse, and
some-
you guys are just as kind of in the dark as I am, I guess, right?
intentionally, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you, I appreciate that.
Having lived in Port Huron and driven by the arena at Saginaw every weekend, I certainly think we have a much nicer venue, so hopefully that weighs into consideration. Agree with that wholeheartedly.
And having the downtown and everything set up. Right now
Yeah.
is a great.
Right,
I don't think anyone can compete with that, just the physical presence that we have on the waterfront with the arena and the other.
Kingston's a strong bid though too, right? They're right downtown as well. Their
Yes,
arena.
and it's also, the Memorial Cup is obviously named in honor of a war memorial, and they have the military history in that angle as well, and I'm sure they'll play.
Excellent, thank you guys.
I know that you're still in the tentative stages on putting the stuff together, but the tourism board has committed large dollars to our bike trail system, the waterfront and the plaza. So I don't know whether you can kind of incorporate some of those new tourist initiatives, product development, if you will, into some events that may transpire.
Absolutely. We are highlighting those in our bid package. We're going to have an event that is a fun walk, ride, or roll. That's going to use the boardwalk and the trails. We want to host most of our events at Roberta Bondar and or the plaza. And we could envision showing highlights on the video screens at the new plaza and other ways of trying to incorporate those and make that really the downtown as the core and the place where all of the visitors are going to gather.
Well, and I think another factor that hasn't come up is the national exposure too, right? So it's difficult to measure what that national exposure is, but just in media alone.
Very much so. TSN is the TV sponsor or TV provider. So they have a big national footprint and presence. And so we'll have a lot of exposure and discussion about Sault Ste. Marie as part of their broadcast in the ordinary course.
So reading the packages, the ask is for
150,000.
150,000, and obviously time constraints. Overall, what is you don't have to tell me or tell us your package or whatever, but what does it typically cost to put on an event like this?
We have the historical budgets of the last few, and the events in total will cost approaching $5 million to put on all of these events. And so we're trying to piece together all of the different buckets of sponsorship, corporate, provincial, municipal, but in total tickets, in total, we're going to need about $5 million to put on a world-class event. And it varies a little bit from community to community depending on different factors, but
So the ask last time was 100
yes,
from the board.
yes.
Is there the 150, is there a difference that you're coming back with that?
The reason for the increased ask is a couple of things. One is general cost increases in the last 2 years, but more importantly, we tried to beef up the number of community events that would make our bid more attractive and attract more visitors to the community. So we've added to the community events. There's required events being the opening parade, the banquet, the awards banquet. Those are required events. We've added other things that we think showcase our community that we don't feel charging admission for most of those would make sense. We want them to be part of a all-inclusive package for participants. And so it has added some cost to our ability to deliver the events.
I think it's important our bid is professionally done.
Yes, yes, we've been very fortunate to have Brooks Marketing, who is the primary company that for Ontario Lottery Corporation and all their tickets. They're a local company, and it was a relationship that Frank introduced me to, and they've been fantastic doing work for us pro bono in developing our package and video and other things of that nature. And they're just really good people, and it's going to give us a very nice product when we're done this.
Thank you. I don't have the resolution on here. We're gonna go on with the rest of them. You should have this. I have the resolution. I'm just saying, did we want to do it in order? You're the others. Okay, we'll move it in with the other resolution then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. I much appreciate it.
Right.
Thank you again.
Thank you, guys.
Over here.
Richard, I don't see snow where you are.
Take care, everyone. Take care.
You want to move?
Take care, Frank. Great seeing you.
Yes, that was kind of what I.
Yeah, absolutely.
See you later.
Yeah.
We're gonna move their tree out.
Yeah.
Them first.
So Josh, if you want to note on the agenda, we're gonna move 7D, the bear train feasibility study. We're gonna move it up as we already have our guests here.
Understood.
Excellent, Alana, I will turn it back over to you for an introduction.
Great. Okay, so we're going to start with some of our TDF asks. We're gonna do the bear train feasibility studies. We're gonna move it up on the agenda. In the room today, I'll introduce you, David, and then if you can introduce your team following.
Sure.
Okay, so we have David McLaughlin, who is the Executive Director of Destination Northern Ontario, which is the regional body that helps to market and promote Ontario's North. So David is here with some of his colleagues to talk to us today about the bear train.
So I'm Dave McLaughlin, Destination Northern Ontario, and I'm here with Linda Seabury Gordon, everyone probably knows, and Dorothy McNaughton, who are on the board and executive committee for the bear train, as well as Jonathan Lalonde, from the Cincinnati Tree Development Corporation, who's I guess a liaison that works with us at the board level for Mascot Transportation Association. So we're here today to talk about transportation and the bear train. So that's the former Central passenger train from Sault Ste. Marie to Hearst. And just to, talk a little bit, in terms of tourism and maybe what we've seen through the pandemic and where we're at. So prior to the pandemic, 2014, 2019, we actually saw Northern Ontario, we actually lost about 30% of our market share compared to the rest of the province. So obviously, coming through the pandemic, we think that we've made some major gains in the domestic market. And I think the 2022 numbers from across the north show that in the accommodation sector, primarily in the urban accommodations. So Northern Ontario through the pandemic, as bad as it was in the early days, actually led the country in terms of occupancy and visitation, and that has continued. So as of November of 2022, which I think that's the latest we have information to, across the north, so that's North Bay, right through Thunder Bay and Kenora, we're still a little bit ahead of the provincial average in terms of occupancy, but we've made really big gains in terms of room rates and revenue per available room. And the news gets better as you move from east to west, and certainly that news has been good here in Sioux. Overall, we've seen about a 28% gain in terms of average daily room rate and about 20% gain in revenue per available room. So that's huge. We're still lagging behind the provincial average by about 20%, but certainly things are looking up for the tourism industry. And we're hopeful, that reestablishing this rail corridor will help us as we look to the future and to growth. And I guess we'll move to the next slide. So just to give a little bit of a background on what we're asking for, early on, gosh, must be like 8 or 9 years ago now, through working group of the city, they actually did a business trade case and economic impact study of what the passenger train meant in terms of the local economy. So, that was, based on numbers that were, 10 years old. And at a time that the industry was just recovering from the Great Recession in the US. So, not the best time, 2010 numbers. If everybody remembers back to those days, didn't matter if you were the CN Tower in Toronto, if you were a fishing lodge in Northern Ontario, or if we were, out on the West Coast, everywhere saw somewhere between a 16 to 70% drop in US visitation. So in discussions that we've had with WATCO, they've asked us to revisit those numbers. So revisit the economic impact, the feasibility, and possibly recommendations. The other request that they've had is that we actually this time use a transportation consulting firm that specializes in transportation. Last time it was done through an accounting firm. And so, we're guesstimating this is going to cost somewhere around $150,000. We have an RFP that immediately ready to go out. We've had the phase 2 just come through yesterday, the day before from FedNor. So we're very, very confident. It's unusual to get to a phase 2 and then to have FedNor say no. So we're really looking forward to move on this and get those new numbers, and hopefully, this will be the starting point of a more intense discussion about getting this train back on the rails, so to speak. So Mascot Transportation Association, so that's a registered not-for-profit. We will be working with the Cincinnati Cree Development Corporation as the accountable body on this project. And so again, we did a business plan a couple of years ago, and WATCO, the new owner, we've had a couple of meetings with them now. And obviously, I'm sure you and the crew train, it's a total different experience, and a very willing and open partner. And what we're looking at is potentially 2 phases of opening, and this is part of the study that we want to do, is looking at Sault Ste. Marie Ova first of all, and then Ova continuing on to Hearst. And the next slide.
I just gotta let him go, manually to let him know he's having a hard time hearing you, so I'm just texting him to go to the next slide.
All right. So obviously, tourism is a strong component of the economy here in the Soo, and the expanded rail line, and especially as the Soo as a jump off point, would certainly would benefit from the reinstation or reestablishment of this rail service along the line. And the next slide. So at the time, they estimated the economic impact of the passenger train at somewhere between $38 and $48 million, and employment along that corridor, of about 170 to 220 for the full-time jobs. So we think that moving forward, certainly now that those numbers would be higher. And again, we're asking for support in undertaking that study. Next slide. So these are some things I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the whole saga. So we've been kind of waiting in the wings as that rail line is sold, which has now taken place. We've had some of those initial discussions, and again that. We think the timing is right to revisit this. Next slide. So again, this will be the jumping off point, not only in our discussions with WATCO, but also in terms of potential funders. If this train is not going to, it's not going to be running again without sustainable funding from government. So whether it's the federal government or the provincial government, Ministry of Transportation showing a greater interest in transportation across the province. So Metrolinx and their expansion in Southern Ontario. We've seen the order now for the equipment for the Northlander train to be started up in 2026. So, we need to look at the other 2/3 of the province. Next slide. So here's who's partnering. So again, we're kind of projecting this at 150, could be a little bit more. FedNor has come to the table. We've asked them for 115,000. We've had several meetings with them now. We did get the phase 1 in. We do have the phase 2, the direction to move forward with the phase 2. We're going to do that very quickly. Destination North Ontario. So my organization I work for coming to the table with up to $25,000. Algoma Kinawabi didn't have any money to put into it, but certainly agreed anything they could do in kind to be willing. We also have the Algoma Community Foundation, and we're also looking definitely at the communities of Wawa and Hearst to see what they can contribute. And we're here today to ask for $25,000 from the Tourism Development Fund to support this study. We really won't know what the costs are until we kind of get that RFP out the door and get those bids back. So we're just kind of working with it. FedNor would like to get at least $90,000 out this fiscal, so we'll see there's some relatively tight timelines. Project's not going to be done, by the end of this fiscal, which is government fiscal, ending March 31st. But certainly we can phase this to get as much money out the door as we can this fiscal. We would hope to have this completed sometime in Q1 of the next fiscal, so hopefully end of June. And I'm not sure if there's one more slide or not.
Could be two more.
All right. Yeah, so we're pretty much ready to get that RFP out the door. We've been working on that for a couple of months now. And, again, this is imperative to, really starting that conversation and really making the case, not only to, transportation partners, but to government in terms of getting this train back on. And again, whether the economic gains across, the whole rail line, with it terminating here in the Soo, certainly a lot of that economic impact would be here in the Soo. And tell you what that's going to be. That's why we want to do this study. From my perspective at Destination Ontario, this is a real key aspect: transportation and being able to move people around the north. We all know we have the one bus right now, and we know there's supply chain issues and transportation issues in the airline industry, and limitations that are there right now. But we see this as an important cornerstone to economic growth, not only this region, but Northern Ontario. So that's it. And glad to answer any questions. I'm used to asking questions.
Thank you for your time and presentation, David. To the board members, do we have any questions for David or Christine at this time?
Is Waco contributing to this? I didn't see their one.
Yeah, this time, no, they're not. This is what they've asked us to do. And we're hoping that through the study we'll make some recommendations and hope. There's so much synergy between the passenger train and the tour train. If we can use this to get some funding, to me it's a no-brainer. But no, do not get any funding at this point.
I could continue with that. So we are in discussions with Waco right now on how we can move forward with the passenger train. They have committed some of the asks that we've been asking for to partner on the passenger train with either leasing equipment from them or we can use their networks to then acquire equipment. So there have been some promises, at least, that we've made so far. And as we move through this project, will be more. Yeah, but we've been in good discussion with Waco. They're willing to help us.
Can I just add that when David was saying about how the figures were dated, if they go back to 2014, but also they're based on CN being the owners of the line. And so when you ask about Watco's contributions, when we met with them and we pointed out that snowmobilers, for example, CN would only allow one baggage car to put snowmobiles on. And yet there were always way more people who wanted to take snowmobiles on their
which is something that we really need, that all season tourism in Sault Ste. Marie. That's in the winter and all the time like that. So WACO would be much more cooperative in allowing us to have more draggage cars and that kind of thing to be able to accommodate that kind of tourist.
So the intention is that it would be a year round. What type of frequency are you guys looking at, or is that?
Well, there've been a variety, I think, of recommendations in the previous study in business plan, and I think here, I think that's part of this study. You know, I think in the summertime, it makes more sense to have more frequency, perhaps in winter time, but you know, what is going to be important to have a level of frequency that will lend itself to be you know, a choice for people to use.
Can I add about the marketing plan? So MTA Inc. was fortunate to be provided funding from the Community Foundations of Canada to do investment readiness. And what we chose to do was a marketing plan. So we have, that was written in 2019 by Geronimo Solutions, who are in the suit. And they did a massive survey. They were extremely pleased at the results. They did a report of over 100 pages of recommendations following the survey. And that marketing plan is going to be really useful moving forward.
Thank you.
So another question about some of the dynamics of the challenges. Having sat on this board, but you know, involved in other meetings and stuff previously with CN and stuff like that about the challenges of improving, you know, the quality of safety, and just from the perspective of the tour train, right? We were talking about improving. I know some of the challenges, some maybe a little bit unspoken. CN had maybe different goals than WACO with the line. I know CN, the primary focus was to move freight up and down the line. Tour train would always have to take a step back in terms of right of way and all that kind of stuff, which sometimes made it a challenge. You know, returning or bringing people up there, returning people back to the city at a certain time. Now, has WACO's focus changed? Because I know the underlying issue was the standards for what the rail lines and the rail beds had to be for cargo is a lot different than, say, what the standards have to be for having passenger trains and moving people up and down the line. So obviously there'd be a substantial investment that would need to be made into the rail lines and the rail beds in order to be able to move a train up and down the line, carrying, you know, passengers or having a service. Let's put it that way. So have any of those dynamics changed? Like, you know, WACO will have a different attitude towards it or different mindset towards it, that kind of thing?
I can speak to this. So yeah, WACO is very community focused. They've been trying to reach out to all the communities in the region. Sault Ste. Marie, they're also meeting with Missionary Cree, Garden River, Batchewana, and then further up development along the line, Wawa and Dubreuilville for service to the mines and the industry up there. So that's to do with the freight, but also developing the ports at Mitchell-McCotton, having that rail line back in operation from Mitchell-McCotton to Wawa and then to Hop Junction. So they're already planning for that. We've seen significant investment on WACO's end to upgrade the rail line for passenger train service. They've been doing a lot of work from here to the canyon so far to be able to service the tour train. Next year, they're looking at going beyond the canyon to upgrade the whole rail line eventually. And then they have high hopes with Wawa and with the operation there that once the OSB plant is operational, they'll be moving hopefully both people and freight. So that's some of the discussions so far. To continue on all the way to OVA, there'll be some significant investment for them to upgrade the bridges and infrastructure there. They're already planning for that. They're looking this spring to do a feasibility study on both those bridges and then move forward with how they're going to upgrade it. They're looking towards hopefully federal and provincial funding for some of those infrastructure costs, but their goal is to upgrade the line and keep it operational for both passenger and freight.
And I think that's why they want this done by transportation. That you can really get into it and acknowledge that. And I think, I wasn't around for the discussions at the end, but certainly going to make more room before that. I've been around a long time. And how, the passenger train, the subsidy for the passenger train really supported, the Golden Central, the Oregon office and that. So, yeah, it's, it's going to be a lot of work. This is hopefully the first step.
Good question. Should everything go well with the feasibility study and we contribute today and all these people put into the feasibility study, is there, let's everything goes forward that, are we having another conversation about TDF money in the future to facilitate the training?
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't thought it.
Okay.
That part,
Yeah.
myself, maybe others have, but I think this is the first step, and then there's going to be some recommendations and numbers, and I think really, in terms of operational funding, that's going to have to come from a provincial or federal source. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, David and Jonathan, ladies, for joining us today. We appreciate your presentation. Thank you for putting this in.
We'll reach out after the meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks again.
All right, so we have 3 other TDF applications that are in front of us. I know that we're starting to run a little bit tight on time, but Elena's going to work us through these last 3. We'll start off here with the Beaver Racer. 1 second.
Before I get into the TDFs, I'm just going to share a little bit about the process of how the applications are received and the steps that I follow through before we come to the board. Just the vetting process that we used, I think will provide some clarity as we go through these evaluations. So we work with the applicants as applications are submitted. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Does Josh have, can you put up the evaluation on the screen? So you can.
They all have them.
Oh, okay.
It was sent out in the board package, but you might be able to.
If you have them, Josh, throw them up, please.
Working on it.
Actually, Josh, go in the share drive. There's one that's just the generic template.
Gotcha.
Probably the best one to put up. So we work with applicants as the applications come in. We go back and forth, we tweak things, we share, best advice practices, so that by the time it comes to the board, we vetted these applications in a way that we think that makes sense. To provide some concrete evidence towards that, we use what we call an evaluation template or a matrix that has a series of different touch points in it that we feel are important to why this event would be successful, the impact that it would bring to the community, etc. So Josh is going to pull that up, but I'm going to quickly go through them. And they're weighted in a way that it's based on targets and visitor days, and what it does do is it elevates the ones that have higher visitors and longer stays. It kind of elevates them up into a higher number for a recommended amount from the TDF. So it's tiny. I'll go through it. The first criteria point is the number of out-of-town participants. How many people are coming here? The next one is how long are they staying? We take those 2 numbers, we blend them together. That creates a visitor day number. And that in itself is worth 35% of the application, just based on the number of people and how long they're staying. We do have a smaller number in here for local participation, it's 5%. Because as we know, if even speaking about the Memorial Cup, when you can get your locals involved and it creates, more of a festival atmosphere with locals, it elevates the success of the event. So we do have some value in there, 5%. The opportunity for growth, is this something that we can move forward? Is this something that, we see being able to grow year over year, 10%? The reach of the event, this is where are people coming from? Who's coming to this event? Are they coming from, across the north, across the province, internationally? Economic impact, we use a number here based on the visitor days, number of people times number of days times $150 per person. It gives us a number that then falls into our economic impact, and there's a range in there worth 10%. The next section is the utilization of local services, attractions, and suppliers. Is this event touching hotels, restaurants, attractions, like who all is involved? All the different venues. And then the next piece talks about what season is it in? Is it hitting in a lower season? Is it filling in a gap that we would like to try and see higher numbers? So those are then weighted into the score. Media exposure, who's providing coverage to this event? Is it going to be on the news? Is it going to be on the national news? What does that look like? That gets put into a score worth 5%. And then the frequency of the event. Is it something that's new, just starting? Has it been going on a long time? What does that look like? So that's worth 5%. And then 5% for, does it meet our priorities? Does it fall in, those touch points that we want to try and move forward? We take all of that information, drop it into this, and it gives us a number with a recommended range. So what I'm going to do today is share with you what the recommended ranges will be based on the evaluations that we've done. The board then has the opportunity to discuss recommended amounts that I provided. You can change that, add it, whatever you want. It's then turned over to the board for discussion as to what number then gets recommended, if favorable, to City Council for final approval. Okay. Any questions on the matrix or how we get to where we are now?
Two questions. I guess one, maybe this probably varies, but the visitor number drives a huge portion of this. And how certain are we of that application by application? Some do we have registrations, some of it just kind of
so that's a really good question. And a lot of times we see applicants come shooting for the stars, saying we're going to bring 5,000 people to this event, and we know generally what is a realistic number, so we'll work with them to try and get their numbers realistic. That being said, in this current climate right now, events are a bit of a shot in the dark as to what those numbers really shake out at. So we have all of our applicants before paying them, we have them submit us a final report that has all of those numbers and how they validated those numbers and how we got to that. So we try and come up with a number that we think makes sense, and then we'll double check it when
Yes, that's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
They're vetted.
They're vetted. And then the other piece too that I should share is the Tourism Development Fund is a reimbursement fund. So these expenses are paid upfront by the applicants and then reimbursed through the city. So once it's gone to City Council for approval, we put together an agreement that says this is what you can spend your money on. This is what it looks like. Then they have to provide us with a proof of payment. So actual bank statements or credit card statements that say you've been paid, you've gone through this process.
My documents are like that much to get my.
But it's reimbursed. So what it does is it provides a sense of security on our part that these funds are not mismanaged. They've been approved, they've been expended the way they were intended to. Now the visitor number piece doesn't necessarily always match. So say somebody says we expect 250 visitors. We get 75. This is the reason why this happened. That's okay. That's okay. But we want to make sure that it makes sense. You have a good reason and everything kind of jives.
And then we're learning from it, right? So we've learned events that have fallen short. We've learned events that have exceeded, and we're using that knowledge.
And sometimes events, like for example, a great example was the Beaver Freezer event last year. The weather tanked. And the weekend it was supposed to be, the registration was there. had to cancel the event. It was an ice storm. So, I mean, those things are taken into consideration.
That actually worked in our favor because it canceled the day out and then it was rescheduled for another weekend, so we got it twice. But appreciating the time constraints that we're in, we can provide more details. We did add some checks and balances last year, including room book blocks that they need to secure, but I know we've got technically 8 more minutes, so
Okay.
we'll just hammer through them.
Real brief one, Mike, is, in terms of how many of these we see a month, is this front loaded, or are we gonna see about 4 a meeting? This one kind of,
It's a rolling intake, so, on average, I would say we have 2 to 3 a month usually.
We may reconsider the approach, just given it has impacted our ability to discuss other items, given, you know, if you got a complicated TDF like the bear train or others, you know, so we're gonna revisit that with the chair and secretary about whether we do them every 2 months or what have you, depending on what the board would like to discuss.
Or dedicated meeting or what,
Yeah.
And another factor is that the TDF, it's taken a while for it to sort of gain ground. So we're starting to see more now than we did in 2020 or 2021. So they're able to do events again. So, I mean, it's a variable.
Yeah, just to give you some idea, last year we put out, it's just that, I'm not 100% sure of the number, it was around $420,000 invested into different events and product development through this fund. So it's a pretty sizable number. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna start with, which one am I starting with? Beaver Freezer. So the Beaver Freezer, has everybody had a chance to review the application summary? So that has been provided and it was included in the agenda package. So the community, public, everyone has a chance to have read that. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through it in detail. I am going to ask if anybody has any questions specific to that event. What I can share from a staff side is this is an event that we see having great potential to grow. It does fill gaps in our winter season. It's local in the sense that you know, it starts and ends at Hiawatha. We're keeping people here in our region. The organizer, Lawrence Foster, has a dedicated team of people who are experts in their field to run this event. Lawrence is a member of our board. He has declared, just for the record, a conflict of interest for this. He's not in the room today. Great ambassador for the community, great person to run this event from our side. We see it as a strong potential and we would recommend his request at, what was it, 6,500? Yeah. 6,500. And then those expenses we've listed here for recommended support. So marketing, insurance, signage, tents, porta potty rental, search and rescue, timing equipment. So essentially he can use those dollars to offset any one of these expenditures or a combination thereof. Okay, seeing no questions. Sorry guys, I don't want to rush you. I just want to, if there is questions, I'm happy to answer them. Runway Park. So this is an interesting one. Also one that I think has great potential. It's a series of different drag races that they do over 3 weekends every year. They've done this annually. What they're looking for now is our support to help grow it. So some context here. Snowcross, which used to be our large winter snowmobile event, has ditched us and they're not coming north anymore. So they I don't expect to see them in the next several years.
Just frustrating after the support we gave them.
100%. And Timmins too. Timmins was in for 50,000 and then we were 10. So motorsports is a very popular segment. Snowmobiling is a very popular sport. They have attracted respectable numbers for people to come to this series without marketing it. So what we're asking for is some funding to help, what the applicant is asking for is some funding to help with the cost of running the event and then some additional support. So they actually only asked for $2,500. My request is to have the board consider $5,000 with a portion of that held back for marketing in the fall so that we can get some promotion out in October, November of this year to help market for next year so that they're not caught up in having to apply to the TDF in the off season and not being able to market it over. So let's do it once and get them set up so that we can get marketing dollars out to help bring people here for this series.
So
Quick on that, what happens is once council goes into budget discussions, we're not able to get anything approved through council. So there's a period towards the end of the year where even if the board recommends funds, we're not able to access them until a later date. So part of the reason why we want to advance some of these funds earlier.
So Alana, on the $2,500 that you said for marketing, are they doing it, or is Richard Jones going to do it, and that'd be part and parcel of it? Like I kind of.
Yeah, they're going to do it, but we're going to have a seat at the table on how best to execute that.
Okay.
We will likely do some of our own additional marketing to help bump it up.
This is over 3 weekends.
So over 3 weekends, January 14th weekend, February 11th weekend, and March 11th weekend. And the one thing I'd like to add in, I think it was in here as well, but the February 11th weekend is over Bonsu. And they have included their event as a part of the Bonsu event, giving recognition to people with Bonsu buttons for admission. And we're going to try and help grow this out as an element of Bonsu to bring in other town visitors.
Is this the January 14th date for next week?
It happened.
It already happened.
Oh, okay.
So being not of the snow machine world, where do you do drag racing?
Runway Park.
Which is.
Out by the airport.
It's pretty cool venue. I've been there once or twice. They do, they used to do the ice drags.
Yeah.
Which were a lot of fun. I don't know if they're doing that anymore, but, and they've done like dirt bike, they have a dirt bike track. They do all kinds of that kind of stuff. It's a pretty cool venue.
Wawa has a few fun in some.
Well, yeah, they have the drags on the airport, they're at the airport.
Any questions on Runway Park snow drag races?
Okay, Jehovah's Witness Convention.
Okay, so the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses is a regional convention. We have hosted them over several years. I say probably, I'll be guessing 4 years. I think we've had them. Over COVID, they moved to virtual meetings, and now we're looking to come back to host their convention in June. This group historically has received funding to help offset the cost of the venue rental, and that's what they're asking for again, is the money to pay for the rental of the GFL Memorial Gardens. They come over 3 days in June in large numbers. Overall participation is around 2,800, and that is a validated number based on past experience. Overall, this is a group that we like to support. They come in, they experience and visit our city while they're here, and have been quite good to us that way. They're asking again just for the same number. It's based on their venue rental fee of $12,000.
Sorry, I don't. Matrix, where did their scoring come in on
They actually come in higher.
Okay.
Their range is 10,000 to 20,000.
Sorry, I don't know the logistics, but we're gonna give them money so that they can give the city money to pay for the GFL, because that's where the money goes. The
Money
GFL.
goes to the GFL.
So the city, instead of the city just giving them a break on it because it's good for the community. They want our money. Get that money. Is that how it works?
They want the city money to pay for the city facility.
Okay, that doesn't seem odd to anyone.
Is this city already discounting the rate for them?
No,
I don't know.
just seems odd to me that they would want the city money to pay the city for the city facility.
Well, I think it comes out of a different bucket, right? So it would have to be an in-kind request. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that's not.
Very difficult to get for the Memorial Gardens.
We all know the challenges of having the city run Memorial Gardens versus an outside company. That's one of them there.
Yeah, from their side, they have to pay it. Yeah.
How did they do it before?
We paid through tourism.
I don't remember.
Tour, so can't share a whole lot, but that's the way that originally it's, when they looked at coming to the community.
That was the deal with
Oh, it's
BMF
like a big
partners.
We
Yeah.
provided through bid support, yeah. It was through our bid.
And I guess with a conference like that, it's not like they have a lot of outside marketing that they have to do because the congregation is congregation, right?
Yeah. And it falls under the meetings convention side.
They've already booked their rooms.
Oh, yes, they have.
Any questions on this, TDF? That's all I have though.
Okay. Excellent. So we now move on to the resolutions side of it. I think, point and Travis, correct me if I'm wrong. The asks today are from two different pots. So our Memorial Cup bid ask is from Tourism to St. Marie's pot, not from the TDF side of it or the city side of it. So it's completely separate funds. That was the one that was at the 1 point.
That's out of the general funds?
It's out of the general funds, which is what it was previously, right?
Yeah, that's some surplus or whatever.
Mhm.
that we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, the city put in.
So those are different funds than what our TDF fund is and where those money come from. So
Going to it's the portion of the map that goes to the city, or it's the portion of the map that goes to Tourism Sault Ste. Marie.
Tourism Sault Ste. Marie.
Okay.
So we have our own account that is Tourism to St. Marie and where we've done some of our larger projects from in the past. The TDF is that portion from the match that gets split with the city.
So you currently have about 1.5 million in general fund. As of right now, if the excluding the Memorial Cup, if the board approves the other TDFs, you have about 100,000. So you wouldn't be able to, even if you wanted to,
Put it on
you wouldn't be able to put it on. the
How should
TDF.
I ask that the city approve their funding out of the city's share of that?
No, it actually came through the community development fund. So it's under their economic development portion.
So my point on that earlier, Mr. Buchanan in the room, is when you look at Halifax, St. John, now what's happening in Kamloops, the number of room nights, if you do the math on the mat, what they're asking for will likely be paid for by the event itself. It's just, it's almost like they're boring like 150, not asking for it. So I think it's just worthy of a discussion or worthy of noting that much money is going to come in from that event, and it's proven because of the history. And,
Well, I mean, I think when you start talking economic impact.
Mhm.
So,
I don't think
so Travis, my comment when I was talking about gathering data is I think we have to treat the Memorial Cup funds the same way, even though it's not a TDF, the same reporting requirements so that we can, how would I say, gather our data to say, have we spent our dollars correctly? You follow that thought process.
I think, Richard, that's easy enough for us to do like we've done with Bonsu with the memorandum and walk tours. We had a similar discussion piece. So I think that that's easy enough for us to implement into it, that we have some type of reporting and data back.
And we can do it on a go forward basis. We'll do it so the board members have it in advance of the meeting.
so, Madam Chair, is it something that has to be done at a separate meeting to put another motion forward to give them more? Or can
No,
that be done?
we can discuss it right now in the resolution. Instead of reading 150,000, we'll read whatever we decide if that's what we'd like to do.
Personally, I think they should have asked for 2 things. Or matching the city, but I think we know what some of the other cities have contributed. We need to be seen that way. That's just my opinion.
The city was 300.
Could I ask, so economic impact is my bread and butter. Could I get a copy of the STEAM and just take a look? I don't think it's anything. I like STEAM, they're better of mine, but they're good, but there can be fishiness with these things. So I could bring my thoughts maybe next, and we could do like 150 today and vote on another,
The
whatever.
bid is going in.
It's going in.
I'll tell you one now.
I don't know,
What we
again,
gave.
personally, have looked at the numbers because I'm the general manager. in St. John and Kim was in the Halifax, and the numbers are good, the rates are very good. I think what the guys share, $180 million are some of the rates that share. So the revenue that we're gonna bring in is gonna be significant.
So you did 300.
Instead of decent time in the schedule.
It
Really
is.
is, because it then leverages us to go to Watco and say, run your train early. Which then we can leverage before the end of the school season with the schools in the north
Yeah.
to come to the educational, it's got a really good marriage of events at that time that would be very good for the city.
Yeah, but I think, golf course, walk tour boat, train, attractions, Richard. The whole tourism ecosystem will be elevated as a result.
Okay,
We match.
the city?
City of Kingston is.
Do you want to call it? Because your owners
don't-
are.
I don't know. I don't think so.
That's what happened. Sure. Yeah, you get matched.
Match.
I think we should match.
Okay. So with that, I will read the resolution. It's going to be a little bit longer of one because it is an amendment from the original one that we did, and then we will move forward with the vote. So the resolution will read, be it resolved that Tourism Sioux State Marine Board of Directors amend the resolution dated August 13th, 2020 from reading. Resolved that the Tourism Board approve the request from the Sioux Greyhounds that Tourism Sioux State Marine contribute to the hosting of the Memorial Cup scheduled for June 17th to June 27th, 2021, the sum of $100,000, which we are told will not be payable if the event does not occur as scheduled, and if money is advanced by Tourism Sioux State Marine and the event does not occur as scheduled, Tourism Sioux State Marine B will indemnified by the Sioux Greyhounds organization. 2, resolved that the Tourism Board approve the request from the Sioux Greyhounds Hockey Club for Tourism Sioux State Marine to contribute $300,000 to the hosting of the Memorial Cup scheduled for May 24th to June 2nd, 2024. Further be it resolved that if the event does not occur as scheduled and if money is advanced by Tourism Sioux State Marine, Tourism Sioux State Marine will be indemnified by the Sioux Greyhound organization. Can I ask for a mover on this motion? Kevin? And I need a seconder, please.
Can I ask the question is why we're automatically, or why we're increasing it without their request?
I think it's too important of an event to our community that leverages our relationship with Watco to get them started early, because I know that's been an ongoing issue for us to get them to run their train during school year and give them that money and allow them a better opportunity to get the bid.
Well, we haven't even seen the Greyhound budget, so, I mean, for us to say, start throwing money around, I don't understand the process. I mean, we asked for 150. That's what they think they need in order to do the events. I don't understand why we would want to increase it.
What's, I guess, your opinion, like, did they come with that because that's what they thought they could get approved, or they being?
They certainly need more.
They need more.
Yeah, we are, I mean, just from a staff,
$1 million event.
well, and from a staff perspective, we are reaching out to provincial funding, like a slew of funding agencies to
Yeah.
try to
I
get
don't
more
normally
funding.
look at my phone during these meetings, but I'm on the email with Marriott Legal to try to make sure that the class action cases are all reach their statute of limitations, because we want to go at that DMF money that's been sitting for 5 years, right? So like they need money. And it's no risk if they don't get bid.
Yeah.
So
That is
I mean, I think the deal is, it seems like the mat it ought to come to a couple $100,000 or more maybe. And then on top of that, you just got a flagstone event for the next decade or two.
Or maybe could we, for the sake, because I know they're under the gun to get their bid in. Maybe word our resolution that, yeah, we'll give you the 150, but we're willing to give you an extra 150 to help you pull off the event. Provided
It would
that
have to
you-
come under a different. Or I guess they could come back to the general fund with that one again.
I think both would be under the general fund.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they don't get it. No money out of their pocket, so. I don't see the risk.
we vote on it.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong, I'm 100%.
Oh, yeah, no.
You know,
You could do a recorded vote and then it's on record of who voted in favor or against, and then.
Sure.
If there wants to be an amendment to the resolution.
Okay.
It follows those rules.
Josh?
I could do it.
Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, we're gonna do it as a recorded vote.
Okay.
On the resolution as previously read.
Beverly, I see Alana making some notes. It's very difficult to hear if.
That's okay, Alana has it.
Thank you.
What do you got first there? I'm looking, holding.
So I would like to move in favor.
My vote will be in favor.
And say it out loud so I can hear you.
In favor.
I'm in favor.
In favor?
In favor.
Richard,
No,
okay, vote is recorded.
Vote is recorded, and with that, we do have a majority, so the resolution is passed. Okay, the next ones, again, keeping in mind, are going to be based off of the PDF. And the first one we have there is the beaver freezer. Resolution reads as follows. Be it resolved that Tourism Sault Ste. Marie recommend a contribution of $6,500 through the Tourism Development Fund, conferences and special event stream to support the 2023 Beaver Freezer Marathon, March 11th, 2023, and that a report be submitted to City Council for consideration and approval. Do I have a mover for this resolution? Don, seconded by Nick. And I will call for a vote on this. All in favor? And motion carried. Next, we have the Runway Park Drag Series. Again, their original ask was for 2,500. The recommendation coming from the city is at 5,000. Does anyone have any comments on that before I read the resolution?
Just that I think you need to control the market. You can't just be there. You said you guys are the seat at the table, but I think you need to control it first.
Can you specify that? Like you need us to send it out through our distribution channels?
No, I don't necessarily. I just
Where they're putting it.
and how.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about their organization that they know how to use social and digital marketing, and I know you guys do, so.
That's fair, and we intend to do that.
Okay, so the resolution for the 2023 Runway Park Drag Series reads as follows. Be it resolved that Tourism Sault Ste. Marie recommend a contribution of $5,000 through the Tourism Development Fund, conferences and special event stream to support the 2023 Runway Park Drag Race Series, January 14th, February 11th, and March 11th, 2023, and that a report be submitted to City Council for consideration and approval. Do I have a mover?
Oh, okay, sorry.
Don?
Yeah, no, I was still on the old one.
Didn't have any coffee at this meeting. Seconded. Tracy? And I will call for a vote on that. All in favor? And motion carried, all in favor.
Could I just add one thought to that, not to affect the, I say it, not to affect the resolution. Because we talked about even some money for next year to help avoid the second application. Could we recommend to them, to try to coincide one of the events with I-500? To try to kind of lever some visitation.
We did talk to them about that. I'm gonna have to get back to you on what the, I don't know, Josh will know more about that.
Next application in front of us is the Regional Convention of Jehovah's Witness. Again, their ask fell within the matrix at the 12,000 with the intention to use it for payment for their venue. Do we have any further conversation before I read the resolution?
I'm with Kevin, but I'll tell you, the impact is greater than 12,000. So it makes it an easy.
It does. I think it's ethically awkward that we're taking our money to give to the city so that they can, it just seems wrong to me, but it is a big event. I get it. On a weekend.
All right, so the resolution for this application reads, be it resolved that Tourism Sault Ste. Marie recommend a contribution of $12,000 through the Tourism Development Fund, conferences and special event stream to support the 2023 Regional Convention of Jehovah's Witness, June 23rd to 25th, 2023, and that a report be submitted to City Council for consideration and approval. Do I have a mover? Jeff? And John. And I'll call for a vote on this one. Okay, motion carried. And that was all in favor. Okay, so that leaves us with our final one, the Bear Train feasibility study. Their ask to Tourism Sault Ste. Marie is a contribution of $25,000 to this feasibility study. Again, the dollar amount is up for discussion if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Now this one, Dream General or TDS?
TDS.
I had kind of mixed same question, but I was too shy to ask, like, if this is for the feasibility study, feels like there's gonna be more requests coming down the line.
Your instincts are right. There's gonna be big asks. A lot of big asks from.
And then I guess that was my other concern. I mean, they didn't have Wawa yet, they didn't have Hearst yet, they didn't have any private sector yet.
They didn't have any numbers that truly show what that train does is put heads and beds in our city. Because I don't think it's anywhere as big as they love to make this. Or not the Agawam train. But the
Yeah,
passenger
that's
train.
the passenger train.
I think the challenge is even just putting the passenger train up, you know, to even getting to the point of somebody considering, because they're still gotta get. I mean, the federal government pulled the money a long time ago for a reason, right? Because it wasn't economically.
I've been on that train and been the only passenger in the car.
Right. I mean, I have mixed feelings. I mean,
It's tough because you're not gonna get it going with the feasibility study.
yeah.
The price tag on the feasibility study, and they fully admitted that they don't know that that's going to be enough, and I didn't hear anything about what their plans are if it's not enough.
And Walker's not prepared to match it for any money.
No, Walker's,
That
Yeah.
makes me.
And I'm curious too, that if we're, for lack of a better way of putting it, kind of being used to lever commitments from other communities.
Yeah.
Saying, well, the Sioux, you know, the bigger community here, you guys should play along. I don't, personally speaking, I think it's a pipe dream, but
well,
you've got to be upbeat about things.
I can read the resolution and we can go from there. Be it resolved that Tourism Sault Ste. Marie recommend a contribution of $25,000 through the Tourism Development Fund product development stream to support the feasibility study for the Masquao Taban Bear Train, the Masquao Transportation Association, and that a report be submitted to City Council for review and approval. Further be it resolved that these funds are contingent upon securing additional financial support from vendor and Destination Northern Ontario. Is there a mover for this motion? Okay. And do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Richard.
Before we vote, can you just read the last part? Again, about vendor.
Further be it resolved, these funds are contingent upon securing the additional funding, financial support from Federal Destination. So if they don't get it, we don't know it.
So are there any thoughts about why Destination Northern Ontario seems to like this more than we do?
It has the ability, I mean, in their mindset, it has the ability to expand tourism in the north broadly, right? So you could access some of the fishing lodges, you can drive more traffic to Hearst, Wawa, what have you.
And that's part of their mandate.
It's part of their mandate. They need a new train to do that.
But I mean, the other flip side of that is a lot of those lodge operators have put in private roads. So they may not need the train per se, like they were relying on before.
Again, that's what the feasibility study is.
There's a possibility the feasibility study may come back and it's not feasible.
That's right, correct. Yeah.
Kind of what they call it, feasibility.
Yeah.
I'd feel way better. Just
I guess my only comment is this, is the city went after the governments for Huron line, and so all we're being asked for, in my opinion, is $25,000 to see whether it's feasible or not. At this stage of the game, that's a pretty small ask to find out whether that line is how would I say, economically dependent for.
And then
So
everything lines up and yes, we get the money from FedNor, et cetera. We're down to 75 grand.
It'll be replenished this year, which we're projecting to be, 400K or so. But I do think, I'm not talking about this particular application, but we are looking at tightening up, particularly on events, the TDF, because obviously we invested a lot, which is exactly what we should be doing. Yeah, so I think we'll, that 400K will go a bit further than it did previously.
Okay, we would like to move forward with the vote. So I'll call for a vote for those in favor of the fair train feasibility study contribution of 25,000. Those in favor?
I'm in favor.
You're in favor? Richard? You know what, I'm in favor of this as well. I guess we'll do this as a recorded vote. Okay, okay,
Sure. Richard, if you wanna, we're gonna record the vote, so if you can record your vote out loud for us, please.
In favor.
lovely. Not in favor? Okay. I'm in favor.
Kevin,
not in favor.
Nick, John,
I'm not in favor.
Not in favor.
Tracy,
Not in favor. Okay, so that motion was defeated then. Okay. Excellent. Travis, we didn't really have much time for your presentation on the dashboard, but everybody did receive the dashboard, correct?
On a go-forward basis, I think we're gonna try to tighten up these meetings if we can. Appreciate that 2 hours, this was unusual. I'm gonna send out a doodle poll post-meeting. Thursdays don't work for a number of people. I understand Wednesday can also be a challenge, and I'm also gonna propose kind of an evening session, 4 o'clock start time. So I'll get that out and the board can decide when they want to meet.
Okay, really appreciate everybody's time today and that we went over. We do try to keep the meetings a little bit tighter, but there were some big items there. I will call for someone to move it out of session.
Before that, can I ask to have the thought, because I know at the end of the last board round, we had talked about increasing marketing dollars specifically for winter marketing. Can we have that on an agenda
Yeah,
coming up? Because I know we're going to be planning our Or I guess Richard will be presenting.
Richard
Yeah,
will present
pre-plan.
that.
And we did increase that, right? So there is additional marketing happening. But I'm gonna have Richard come and give like an overview of the marketing and the go forward for 2023. No, it's irrelevant.
Right, so move to adjourn today's session. Kevin? Jeff seconder? Okay, we're done.
Richard, are you available for a quick call in about 15 minutes? If not, tomorrow morning before 9.
No, today would be better.
Okay, I'll give you a call right after this. I've got